Hi friends, my name is Al or Lilstarnerd, and today I want to take some time to thank you. Recently in December, I hit 50,000 subscribers, which is insane. I really don't even have words for it. It is so exciting to hit that milestone. It feels like I've been leading up to this moment, and it's really exciting to finally be here, and it's a really rewarding milestone to hit. There have definitely been times where I felt like I'm wasting my time doing this, or what am I doing? And I'll never get anywhere. And so hitting 50,000 is not only super rewarding, but it feels like a promise of hey, this is worth it and there's great things to come. And obviously I would not be here, and I certainly wouldn't be hitting this milestone without you guys. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I am getting a real shot at my dream job of being an artist and just doing whatever I want, and it's only because of you guys, and I am so grateful. I am really lucky to have an amazingly kind, talented, and very supportive audience, and I feel so lucky for that. My time online sharing art, and specifically here on YouTube, has been incredible, and I owe that to how amazing you guys are. I am so excited for what's to come this year, and hopefully we'll hit some other exciting milestones together. So just thank you. I love you guys. Thank you. I am so happy and just filled with gratitude. On that note, there's kind of an inside joke I feel like that we have going here on my channel between me and you guys, and it's kind of at my expense, and I deserve it. I get asked a lot, what sketchbook do I use, despite the fact that I make that information so easily accessible, and it drives me crazy when I get asked it, and you guys like to make fun of me for it. Rightfully so. I get questions all the time what paper does it have? And does it work for this medium? And do you like it? And it's besties, I talk about it all. And then I realize it is fair to ask those questions because I do talk about it all the time, but I talk about it in passing. I have never made it clear how, I talk about how I love the sketchbook, but I've never thoroughly reviewed it. And so that's what this video is today. I am going to be giving a definitive review of the Strathmore Mixed Media Series 500 softcover/hardcover sketchbook, which is my preferred sketchbook. And because I get so many questions about it, I'm also going to fill you in on my own sketchbooking process, how I fill spreads, how all that works, my sketchbook philosophy, all that stuff. So let's get into it. This is the Strathmore Mixed Media Paper Series 500 softcover sketchbook. So everything that I'm going to be talking about is about this sketchbook, but most of what I'm saying will also apply to the hardcover version, which I have also used. It's the same paper, same stuff, it's just slightly different dimensions, and obviously it's hardcover. Not including this sketchbook because I haven't used it yet. This is an empty one, but these are all finished and or currently using. I have 8 Mixed Media Series 500 Strathmore sketchbooks. So, I really like it. It is mixed media paper. It is 100% cotton, acid-free, archival quality. It has 64 pages or 32 spreads. It is 7 3/4 by 9 3/4 inches or 19.7 times 24.8 centimeters. And it uses 90-pound paper. Obviously it is bound, so it's not spiral, which I prefer. I hate spiral bound. The paper is pretty white, which I also prefer that. I know some people like tone paper. I know some of their other sketchbooks have yellowy stuff. I don't like that. To me, it just looks pre-aged. The paper is thin, but it's quality, and so it's thicker than it seems. I'll wobble it for you. Wobble test. Pretty good. This is pretty smooth paper. If you look at it and feel it, you can see some texture. It looks pretty crushed. So as in you can't feel it, but you can see it. But I don't want that to scare you. It does still have tooth to it. If you've ever had marker paper, it feels very plasticky. It's nothing like that. It feels like paper, but a soft paper. I'd say it's somewhere exactly in the middle where it still feels like paper rather than plastic. It's smooth, but not too smooth. So this is soft cover, and I don't just mean that it's flexible and bendable. I mean the cover is buttery soft, which is really nice, but that does mean that it actually gets beat up really easily. It gets scratches and little dents in it immediately. However, that remains on the outside. It doesn't mess up anything on the inside cover. The dents don't show through. It doesn't mess up the paper. In terms of durability, I'd say it's pretty good. This is my oldest Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook, and the texture feels entirely different to what it does originally. It's very gritty, almost like a soft sandpaper, but you can see it's held up really well. The binding is still totally fine. fine. Nothing is falling out, paper doesn't like fall apart. To be fair, I don't take my sketchbooks places that often. I don't like put it in a backpack. I don't travel with it every day. So I'd say it gets like moderate use or moderate beating up. So it definitely goes through some wear and tear, and I have never had a problem with it falling apart. It also holds stickers really well. This is something that I glued down with Mod Podge, or like a glue stick, so that doesn't count. But it holds stickers really, really well. You don't have to like tape them down or glue them down or anything. Now, I know a big concern for a lot of people is its ability to lay flat. So we're gonna start with the old one that I have laid flat 1,000 times, and it's amazing. Look at that. Look at how well that lays flat. It lays flat really well. I have never had an issue breaking in a new sketchbook and immediately getting it to lay flat, as long as you kind of break the binding properly. And because it lays flat so easily, it's also really easy to scan both on single pages and when you have something going across the binding, it takes minimal editing. So overall, in terms of like the physical sketchbook itself, to me, it has top marks. But the real question is, how does it handle different mediums? So we're gonna go medium by medium and talk about its ability to be used. First, we're gonna talk about sketching / graphite / pencil. I know some people have the concern or the experience with mixed media sketchbooks that like that paper doesn't handle dry media or pencil well. I have not had that experience with this sketchbook. I use graphite all the time in these sketchbooks, and I think it looks and works beautifully. I can blend really well, get even tones really easily. The only issues I ever have is like with my own lack of skill. You can get full range of values from your darkest to your lightest, and you can erase really easily. There's just enough texture and tooth for the pencil to grab onto, but not so much that you can't like get nice even blending and tones. Next, we're gonna talk about colored pencil, which goes kind of hand in hand with sketching. I have used the full range of colored pencil mark making from really light shading and single layers to heavy line work, all the way to fully rendered pieces. This is a fully rendered portrait with many, many layers, lots of burnishing, lots of pressure, and I think it looks really nice. Not only does it look really nice, but they're really easy to use on this paper. They blend really nice, they feel really buttery. I think I can layer as much as physically possible with my Prismacolor pencils on this paper. Here's a messier, less rendered colored pencil piece that I've done. There is some texture where you don't fully burnish it, so you get texture, but you don't have to have texture. So if you want one but not the other, like you have both options. Now markers. Markers have been my main medium for a really long time, so there is plenty of examples of me using markers in every single one of these sketchbooks, and I have never had a problem. Here's some examples of really light layering and really light colors. I think everything is super crisp. There is some degree of bleeding with every single alcohol marker I use. It is kind of absorbent paper, so that is an issue. But in my opinion, the bleeding isn't like crippling. I can totally work around it. I often mix markers with colored pencils to neaten up and like crisp up those edges, so I do that. I think markers show up really, really vibrantly and saturated and just beautiful on this paper. I think they work really well. You can get a really great range of dark and light values. You can do lots and lots of layering. You can get the paper really, really wet. It's really good for kind of evening out your marker. So if you put down like one big block of color, it'll even that tone and you can get a nice flat wash. I also personally find this paper really, really good for blending. So you can kind of feather out your pen strokes really well. Now, a question that I get all the time about markers on this paper, and something that I know a lot of people are concerned about, is how absorbent is the paper? Does it use up all the ink in your markers really quickly? And the answer is like kind of yes. It is kind of bad for your markers. People get mad at me all the time for using the wrong paper for markers, but I personally hate marker paper. I think markers look a lot prettier on more absorbent paper like watercolor paper and mixed media paper. I know it's bad for them. I think the colors can be so much softer and also more vibrant. They blend so much better. And this is not as absorbent as watercolor paper, so it's not gonna suck up your markers like fully dry really, really badly. To be fair, I've never used marker paper regularly. I've only ever used markers on mixed media paper, so I don't really have something to compare it to. But I can say that I don't go through markers really quickly. They don't dry up every like few weeks or anything. Like I feel like my markers last plenty long for how often I use them. So while yes, it is absorbent paper and it does suck up some of your ink, I don't think it's like a concern, at least not by my standards. Another big concern, of course, is the bleed through of markers. So it is bad. So here is this page and that's the bleed through. It's pretty significant. Even light colors bleed through pretty bad. Not only does it bleed through, but it might actually ghost onto the other paper. As long as you put some sort of page protector or even just another sheet of paper in between, that's not a problem. But if that is something that you can't get around, I wouldn't suggest this sketchbook. I think it handles markers beautifully, but it is not immune to bleed through. Moving on, we're gonna talk about about like liners, pens, ballpoint pens, like felt tip pens. This is all liners. Not much to say here. It handles it really well. It's really good, a good texture for like drawing on with kind of drier pens. And also it handles like heavy ink really well. You can see this is on the other side. There's no ghosting or bleed through at all. Now, if you hold it up to the light, you can kind of see through it. It's not that thick of paper. But yeah, for like regular use, if you do lots of pen doodles or really micron heavy stuff, I think this is a great sketchbook to use. In terms of bleeding or spreading, obviously if anything is really juicy or really wet, there is gonna be some degree of that, but I have not noticed that with any sort of ink or pen that I've used. I've never had an issue with any sort of spreading or spider webbing or anything like that. Now we're gonna talk about paint pens. I think when people were asking about this, they probably meant Poscas. I don't have Poscas and I've never used them in these sketchbooks, so I don't know how they'll perform. But I have had plenty of other brands, much juicier and like fatter brands of acrylic paint pens and also some knockoff Poscas. Here is an example where I used one quick coat for a background. It has a really nice texture. If there's one thing the sketchbook can handle, it's probably this. To be fair, I think it's more my pens than anything. I think the felt of my pens is like falling apart and I get these gross like felty, like crumbly bits on my paper, like stuck in the paint. But it could also be that I'm layering them too much and it's literally eating up the paper. I'm not 1000% sure. I definitely can use the paint pens for one quick coat somewhere or blocking in shapes or something like that, but I can't really layer them. I try to avoid layering them really heavily or putting too much ink down at once. I have finer nib ones and those don't have the same problem. So as long as you have a finer point, I think it should be fine. Limited quantities, it's fine. But yeah, if you do full pieces with lots of layering of them, I might be a bit wary of the sketchbook, but I think it's worth trying. Now we're gonna talk about really wet mediums. I did get a question about like how much water can this paper hold before it tears. I have not ever had a problem with tearing and I've gotten the paper pretty wet. Tried to do some experimenting, but I was actually doing it on the back of a finished gouache piece and I reactivated the gouache on the other side because I forgot that it was there. And so I was like, maybe I won't keep going. Maybe I won't try to tear this paper and ruin this piece that I really like. But yeah, I can't imagine people needing to get the paper any more wet than I had gotten it. And it was fine. It didn't even feel like it was about to tear. Like there was no fear there. So I think you should be good. This sketchbook handles wet mediums like a champ. Is it like the best for watercolor? No. But considering it's now watercolor paper, it astounds me every time. I just did my first page of like my new sketchbook and I did it in gouache and the page got really, really wet. And obviously there was some warping. There's definitely warping on this paper. But after like I think I finished it 2 days ago and it has been sitting like this. So it was not weighed down until just now. And it has already flattened out so much. There's obviously some warping. So you can see like the edges of the paper are kind of curled up. Overall, like it is warped. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's warped, but like not that bad. Here is a really old gouache piece that I did in September of 2020. So it's really old, so it has plenty of time to flatten out and it is almost perfectly flat. Almost no warping at all. Let's see the paper that I just loaded with water yesterday. It is fine. It's not warped at all. The paper that I literally loaded this entire top section with water and it's not warped. As you're working, it will get warped. If that's a pet peeve, definitely unavoidable in this sketchbook. But like, if you're more worried about the final product, I would not be concerned about that. Ink in this sketchbook, I don't use that often just because I don't use ink that often, but I have used it like watercolor and it's worked really well. It's super saturated in the sketchbook. Overall, like literally no issues with ink. So if you use a lot of ink, I would not be afraid of the sketchbook. Watercolor also works really well in this sketchbook. It performs exactly how I expect watercolor to perform. I think it looks really good for being like sketchbook quality stuff. I think it looks great. There's no difference for me between here and watercolor paper that I notice as someone who's not a watercolor like connoisseur. Like this is great for me. Great saturation, wet on wet works really well. Layering, no issues layering. I have not reached like a peak point of layering. I can layer as many times as I want. Really great saturation, really good control on this paper, and not a lot of bleeding or spreading or anything like that. Overall, just another example of a medium that I have no issues using in the sketchbook. Gouache / acrylic gouache. I love using those mediums in these sketchbooks. Here's an example of really gross dried up jelly gouaches that I was using. Some more examples of jelly gouache. Here is a full spread with gouache. This is also the last page. So again, seeing that like lay flat, it looks really nice for being at the very end. Obviously, like I said, my first page is this is gouache. I think it looks amazing. Here's an example of acrylic gouache. So again, really good performance. The only issue I do have is that I can't use markers on this page now. I can do markers and then gouache, but you can't do gouache and then markers. The markers will bleed through and ruin your gouache. And then acrylic. I've actually never used acrylic in these sketchbooks. I would like to try, but I had never used acrylic on paper until very recently. So I've never tried it in the sketchbook, but I have full faith that it would work well. Finally, soft pastel, oil pastel, and crayon. I've only used soft pastels in a book like this, and it worked really, really well. This is after I sprayed fixative on it, so like what was on the back kind of bled through, but it worked really well before I had sprayed it. Again, just enough tooth for it to stick to mix really well, like blend really well, to stay down. I also did swatch crayons and oil pastels when I was like testing everything yesterday, and they worked just fine. For swatching, I had no issues. Finally, I forgot collage. Collaging works pretty well in this sketchbook. It's not something that I do often or primarily. Again, there's some warping if you get the paper really wet, but it will get flat again. I don't really have any issues with using lots of Mod Podge or getting that to stick. I do have issues taping stuff down, using a thin layer of glue, using Post-its, stuff like that. I really have to firmly secure stuff in. Overall, I have no issues mixing any of these mediums together as long as like they can mix. So like mediums that don't mix just in general, I don't use obviously, but if it can be mixed, it mixes really well in this sketchbook. I also have a few specific questions I want to answer before we move on. Has a soft cover ever been a problem? No. So obviously it does get super beat up really easily. I don't care. Like I literally don't care. I cover it with stickers most of the time anyways. I don't have a problem with my sketchbook looking beat up or looking gross. I think that means that it was well loved and well traveled. It's also, I can't think of a time it's ever been a problem in any way. Now that I've tried the hardcover, I don't think I prefer either one over the other. Hardcover is definitely nice for like sending it in your lap and having somewhere to like firm to work on, even if you're on the ground. But I really like that I can do this with the soft cover. I really appreciate that. So yeah, it's never been a problem. What paint mediums work the best in this sketchbook? I would definitely have to say gouache. Probably because I'm biased, I like gouache best of all. But I just think it looks so beautiful. I think it works so well. It's also great for covering stuff up because it's opaque and it doesn't bleed through. So it just like pairs really well with the sketchbook in my opinion. What makes this sketchbook my favorite? The fact that I can trust any art supply in here. No matter what I try, I feel comfortable using it in here. I think it is the like perfect size for me. It's the perfect amount of pages. What are the benefits of a bigger book size? I don't think there's necessarily objective benefits. I just think that this book size fits me. I will also say, if this is like a bonus to you at all, if this appeals to you, I think the bigger size is like more conducive to spreads. I think it's just like easier to fit stuff in there and make it a more like full and fun spread. So we've moved to the floor because I straight up was getting sick of standing. So we reviewed the sketchbook and now I'm gonna talk about like my personal sketchbook philosophy. How do I keep them? How do I fill them? All that stuff. First of all, I wanna say, just remember that like we all are different people. We're all gonna keep sketchbooks differently. My philosophy does not have to be your philosophy. You don't have to do what people say just because it's me and you like me, or it's someone on the internet, or you like the way their stuff looks. People see the purpose of sketchbooks differently. They keep them differently. They have different art styles. So, just don't feel like you need to do what I do because I do it. I got a lot of questions in prep for this video that kind of like, you guys kind of made it sound like you were trying to force yourself to do things that didn't work well for you or didn't like come naturally to you. You don't have to do that. Like, don't force yourself into a sketchbook method that will do more harm than good. That being said, you also are allowed to push yourself outside of like what comes naturally to you. Just because it's not like easy doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like, it's okay to strive for things that are outside of your comfort zone. I just want to make it clear that like, if something really sounds bad to you, you don't have to do it. Anyway, so what I'm currently doing with my sketchbooks for the past year is I keep each sketchbook for 3 months. Like I said earlier, this is 64 pages, so I split that up by 3. It's about 21 pages, and then I have 30 to 31 days to fill those 20 to 22 pages. I started this because as like a personal challenge, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I took about 7 months to fill this sketchbook, and I just felt like that was a bunch of time wasted. I don't really remember. I guess I just wanted to see if I could do it. And then I could pretty easily, and so I kept doing it, and I was like, I'll just do it until it's not good for me anymore, and I have not reached that point yet. Obviously, there are YouTube-based benefits. I get to do sketchbook tours more often, which are really popular videos, so there's that. But there are also like lots of personal benefits to it. Not like a lot. Like I always say, like it's not life-changing what I'm doing. It just like is not negative at all. Also remember that this is my job and this is all I do all day, so like don't compare yourself in that way either. Just because like I'm drawing every day or I do it really often or I'm able to complete these sketchbooks really quickly does not mean that you should be able to, especially if you're doing other things with your life like I'm not. that. Anyways, this pushes me to draw way more often. Like I said, it took me about 7 months before. There were lots of days where I just sat there with my sketchbook open, just staring at it, like waiting for inspiration to strike. I'm no longer relying for like an idea to come to me to draw. I'm learning to be more independent in that sense. It's helping me improve faster because I'm drawing more often. It's really helped me enjoy my time in a sketchbook better. A lot of people ask, like, how do you like motivate yourself to like finish it? Like, how do I not skip the last few pages because it's almost done anyways? Having a time limit to my sketchbooks really helped like get over that issue. I used to have that issue all the time where by the end of my sketchbook, I was so sick of it. I didn't want to be in it anymore. I am not in a sketchbook long enough to hate it by the end anymore. I at no point feel like sick of a sketchbook or feel like I need to fill in pages for no reason just so I can be done with it. I'm only in it for 3 months. That is plenty of time for me to make the most of every page that I see fit, you know? There is some confusion about this 3-month time limit. It does not result in me drawing every day. There are very few times that I would give myself that goal long term. Like, this is the thing that I've been doing all year. If this resulted in me drawing every day, that means I would have drawn every day for a year, and I don't think I could do that. It's only 21-ish pages in a 30-day month, so it's about 2/3 of the month that I'm drawing. And also remember that there are filler pages. There are plenty of times that I glue stuff in, that I waste a page, that I use a page for swatching, so I'm not doing a full piece like 21 days of the month. It's just enough effortful drawing for it to be a regular practice and habit for me without it being a daily chore and without me only drawing twice a month. This 3-month period is totally arbitrary. There's not a reason for it being 3 months. That's just how this comfortably fit into my schedule, being the size that this sketchbook is. This 21 pages a month is really comfortable for me, my pacing and my schedule. So, you know, don't feel like you have to do 3-month sketchbooks in like a 200-page sketchbook. You know what I mean? How do I fill them so fast / in 3 months? I don't know. I don't know, I just do. It's my job. I make a lot of videos out of this stuff. It's my hobby. It's all I do all day. I have a lot of things that I want to draw. I don't really know how I fill it so quickly. I just do because I have to. I know that's not helpful. It's a skill that you have to build up. If it doesn't come naturally to you to fill a sketchbook consistently, thoroughly, whatever, it is a skill. I had to take plenty of years to get where I am today. How do you have so many ideas to fill a sketchbook in 3 months? I don't. There's plenty of repetition in these sketchbooks. I have fallbacks to things like that are in my comfort zone. I swatch the same colors over and over again. But you know, simultaneously, I live a life and every day is a new day. And so every day there's something new that I am perceiving that gives me a new idea. It's not like every page is filled with original pieces. It's a lot of drawing from reference. Like, there's very, very few original pieces. Does the time limit stop me from making art outside of my sketchbook? No, but to be fair, I don't do a lot of art outside of my sketchbook anyways. Since I started taking art seriously, my sketchbook has always been the primary place for me to do art. That being said, when I do want to do it, I have no shortage of time for that. I have plenty of time to do full canvas paintings, commissions, multiple commissions in a month. Continuing kind of the discussion of my philosophy when it comes to sketchbooks, I don't always practice what I preach, but I try to remember that my sketchbook is like my safe place to do whatever I want to do. It doesn't have to be good art. It doesn't have to be art that I show people. It can be totally experimental. I like to try new things, get out of my comfort zone, face my fears, practice. I use it as a place to do whatever I want to do in relation to art. I've been really trying to follow my impulses to encourage creativity. Of course, there is always the knowledge in the back of my head that there will be a sketchbook tour at the end of it, and that does affect what I do sometimes. Overall, I try to remember my sketchbook is my sketchbook. While I do want my sketchbooks to look good at the end, I try not to worry about making them look perfect or pretty as I'm in them. I'm more worried about doing exactly what I want or need to do in that moment. Sometimes that means that I make bad, ugly, lackluster, uncreative pages and spreads, and that's okay. Failure is okay. Bad art is okay. If any place exists to do bad art, it's your sketchbook. Now let's talk about sketchbook spreads. I got a lot of questions about sketchbook spreads. I get asked this a lot. I don't plan them. I don't plan anything about them most of the time. There's no worry about composition. Retroactively, if like you hear a sketchbook tour and I'm talking about like, oh, this composition is terrible, it's not because I planned it, it's because I didn't plan it, you know what I mean? In general, in my sketchbook, I'm not planning things. Like, it's not a piece that I'm thumbnailing. The only time any planning in a spread happens is when I'm doing something on a page and I like it and I think it might go well as a spread, so then I use that as a source of inspiration for the other page. I don't sit and plan like, what's my idea for this spread? Like, what's the theme gonna be? You guys are overthinking this, honestly, it's not that deep. My idea of a spread is just 2 pages that look kind of cool next to each other. They don't have to be the same theme, the same color palette, palette, nothing. Have fun. If you really need tips for a spread, go over the center line a little bit, carry over some of your colors to the other page, boom, you've got a spread. Don't stress about all this like planning. I don't know where this idea came from. Everyone was asking like, how do you come up with ideas? How do you plan? How do you plan? I don't know why you guys think I do. I don't. I also get asked along that same line, how do I come up with the themes? How do I figure out what to put in a spread? How do I get my inspiration? So I realized that I used to struggle with the same thing, coming up with ideas, figuring out what I was gonna draw that day, figuring out what the page was gonna be. I used to have that issue a lot back in the day when I had really limited skills. When I was a beginner and my comfort zone was really, really small and I only stuck to a few subjects and I wasn't willing to branch out, I wasn't willing to learn, and I was not willing to be bad or fail. There were really only a few things that I felt comfortable drawing and I got sick of drawing them every day. And so I would sit down and be like, what am I gonna draw? And there were so few options that I could never think of anything. It wasn't until I let all of that fear go, all of those limitations go, and I was willing to step out of my comfort zone that I found that there's actually a billion things to draw every day. You have to be willing to try new things. You have to be willing to fail at those things. You have to be willing to learn. You have to open yourself up. I think we just get really narrowed in on like one thing that we find interesting and we're so unwilling to look at anything else. Turns out that all those other things are just as interesting. So I got a lot of questions about dealing with bleed through in a sketchbook, like what do I do with those messed up pages, stuff like that. Because I work a lot with marker, I do get a lot of bleed through in my sketchbooks. And there are times that I don't want to deal with it, and I fully avoid using marker because I don't want to deal with the bleed through. But I do have plenty of methods for dealing with those pages. One method is just taping stuff down, just putting stuff, either sketches from my trash sketchbook or doodles that I did on other paper or little keepsakes. I glue that down over the marker bleed through. I also do this a lot where I will cover it fully in washi tape and then put other stuff on top of that. You can do a collage or just like put in, like sometimes I'll print my digital work and tape that in. I also use it as a page to take notes, so I don't put any art on that page or do little doodles, stuff that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it gets ruined. Here's kind of a good example of that. There's like little OC doodles and like notes that I was making about them. And I didn't really care how good quality those were. Sometimes I'll really like the way the bleed through looks and I will just redraw the thing, like redraw the lines and make it work as its own piece. You can always gesso or use like white gouache on top and make it a new page. Gouache is also great. Gouache covers stuff really easily. Not always, but most of the time I can just do a gouache piece on top and it's like, you never know. You can also always just skip that page, leave it blank. You don't need to fill it in if you don't. It's your sketchbook. There are no rules except for the arbitrary ones you made. It's all fake, dude. Do whatever you want. If you want to leave it blank, leave it blank. Who cares? So let's also talk about perfectionism in my sketchbooks. I got a lot of questions about that, how I deal with that, and it's definitely there. I got a lot of questions about how do you deal with making the first page good. I just do a first page, and if it's bad, who cares? I have, 60 more pages to make up for it. If you really have an issue with like that crippling fear, you can just skip it, tape something in. If you really like a piece you did in your last sketchbook, scan it, print it out, tape it into your first page. There are no rules, do whatever you want. But yeah, overall perfectionism in my sketchbook, it can be hard to get over. I think it really requires a mindset shift and a lot of maturity, like maturing. I've changed the way I see that perfectionism and how I implement it. I'm just looking to do my personal best on any given day. I think it's okay to aim for perfection in your art. I think that's kind of what we're all doing in most things. As long as you're also aware that failure is always an option, it's inevitable, it will happen at some point, and it's okay if it does. Accepting, embracing the possibility of failure has really helped. It doesn't matter. It's just a sketchbook. I can try my best. I can aim for perfection. It might not happen. That's okay. If something in your sketchbook really bothers you, you can cover it up. You can rip it out. It doesn't matter. Okay, I have a few more specific questions that I'm going to answer that again just didn't fit into my whole spiel. Do I prep pages before working in them like gessoing? No, absolutely not. For me, I've gotten that recommendation for a lot of things. I'm like, no, I don't want my sketchbook to take prep. That's what a canvas is for, a final piece is for. This is a sketchbook. I should be able to sit down, open it up, and do whatever I want. I am a firm believer in the easiest course. So no, I want things as easy as possible. I don't prep my pages. Finding time to make art on a regular basis. So obviously for me, it's really easy because this is my job. This is all I do all day. So I'm really lucky. So I think it's unfair for me to give you tips or tell you you need to make time for art every day. Some people literally only have 3 hours in a week for me time, and I don't blame you for wanting to use that time to veg out. I think with the internet and with a lot of people like me, who this is my job, and I make so much art on a regular basis and I show that art, I think we kind of skew the idea of what an artist should be expected to put out. It's okay if you don't make art that often. It's okay if it takes you a long time to fill a sketchbook. I'm not gonna tell you that you need to be doing art regularly or every day. I think it's great if you can, but if you can't, that's fine too. What I will say is instead of like carving out time to do art on a regular basis, try to fit it into pre-existing like holes in your schedule. When you're in transit, if you take like public transport, maybe you can like pull out your phone and do a quick like doodle on your phone. In between classes, doodling in your notebook, or while you're on a phone call, doodling on a napkin. And by the way, I think any sort of doodling, any low effort, any sort of art at all counts as art time. You don't have to be doing a serious sketchbook spread or a portrait on a canvas for it to count. Overall, don't feel bad if you don't have time every day to do art. It's my job and I still don't have time to do art every day. Do I ever get tired of using the same sketchbook over and over again? Yes and no. So I'm not like forcing myself to stay in the sketchbook. It's not like I'm only allowed to use this sketchbook. I'm using it because I really love it. You know, I'm free to use another sketchbook when I want to. In fact, I'm actually planning my next sketchbook being not this one. But you know, sketchbooks aren't cheap. So it's really hard for me to justify risking my money on a sketchbook that might not work well for me when I know I have a perfect fit right here. Yes, the novelty is worn off, but no, I'm not sick of it. Do you have a Pinterest? Yes, it is always linked. It's in my bio on Instagram. It's linked in every single video, description. I don't care if you follow me. You can. If you want to like use my references, I don't care, but like I'm not plugging it, I don't care. How to keep your sketchbook diverse in subject matter. If you like drawing the same thing over and over, like that's fine. I don't feel like you should need to change that, but also I understand wanting to grow as an artist. If you are looking to branch out, it is as simple as just asking yourself like, hey, what have I never drawn before? What am I scared of drawing? What am I bad at drawing? I think people really, and I used to too, again, it's that whole discussion of like, I used to like limit myself so much and be scared of so many things and be so closed off to so many things. But coming up with like things to draw is really not that hard once you get into it. You just have to be willing to draw things that maybe don't like make you want to cry with passion, you know? Do I tear out pages or leave them in if I don't like the page? What do I do with ruined pages? I'm totally okay with making bad art. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's inevitable. Every artist makes bad art or things that they don't like, and I think that's fine. Sometimes I definitely do cover stuff up if I'm trying to make like a nice page. Like I'll just put a sticky note on top. Pages, if it's a full page, I'll leave it. I don't care. I might, you know, tease myself a bit about it or make fun of myself in a sketchbook tour when I talk about it. But overall, if there's something small, a doodle that I want to try again, I'll just put a sticky note over it. I never tear stuff out of my sketchbooks. I don't like doing that. Is having a theme/goal/aesthetic in mind when completing a sketchbook helpful or limiting? I think that totally depends on the person. You know, we're all different. We all use sketchbooks differently. If you think it'll help you, you should totally try it out. And guess what? You can quit two days in, halfway through. If it's not working for you, it's your sketchbook. You're making up the rules and they're all fake. But yeah, I don't think, unless there's a really small, short-term sketchbook, I don't think that's something that I would ever do. I would find that limiting. Okay, there we go. That's everything. I have been talking for so long. That's my video. I hope you found it helpful, interesting. I get lots of questions about all of these things. Thank you so much for joining me. And again, thank you for 50,000 subscribers. I am just so excited. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here always. Please like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed all that stuff. I had so much fun. My throat does hurt because I've been talking for such a long time. So I'm gonna go. Go water your plants, take your vitamins, and go do some art.